Okay, I believe Brian Allman is here. There he is with his chapeau. Nice, looking good, Brian. Allman, you were in the well, you weren't in the committee this morning, but I hear that you were watching the House Rev and Tax Committee on this school choice tax credit bill. I kind of went off on a little bit of a rant today about what I think is a higher, the bigger issue. That being said, why don't we get everybody up to speed on where this bill is?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So Wednesday mornings I have a homeschool pod of a couple of students, and Wednesdays we do civics, and so it was perfect timing. We're watching a civics lesson in real time as we watch the presentations and the debate and the public testimony and the motions and the votes. So yeah, it was long. It was probably 2 hours, and both Representative Wendy Horman and Senator Lori Den Hartog presented the bill, and there was testimony. A lot of the usual folks, the public school associations and the retired teachers came out and said this is terrible. We don't want anything that could possibly take away from public schools. They like the system how it is, which I don't get that, but you know. And then you had parents who came up and said this would be really great for them. You had the private schools that says they're ready to to work with this and be open to parents who might otherwise not have that option today, and they would have that option under this bill. And of course, there was lots of debate. Representative Britt Raybould from out in Rexburg area, was very much against this bill. She asked numerous questions of the sponsors and of the testifiers, and she made a motion to table the bill, which is to kill it. And that motion failed on a 7-8 vote, which once that vote was taken, you kind of knew how the actual motion to send the bill to the floor was going to go. But she still took the time after it failed to, for probably 10 minutes, debate against the bill about everything she didn't like about it. There was also opposition from the Democrats, Representative Birch and Representative Gannon. Obviously they're going to vote against any school choice bill, but they were trying to, explain various reasons to justify that. Representative Jason Monks, the House Majority Leader, made a very good debate in favor of it. Both he and Senator Den Hartog, the Majority Leader in the Senate, by the way, they both have children in private systems, but they've both said that they're not going to take advantage of the credit. So it's not about them; it's about giving other people the opportunity. And yeah, in the end, it did pass 8-7, so it was very close. Representative John Schertz, when going into it, I wasn't sure how he was going to do it. He's a freshman out in District 9, which is right on the border with Oregon. He defeated Representative Jason Gallagher this year in the primary, which I felt was unfortunate. Representative Gallagher is a solid conservative, but he came around and said that he supported this bill. So that was kind of the flip. Remember, this bill failed in the same committee last year, but a lot of the people who voted against it ended up losing their seats because of it.
Right. Yeah. We pointed that out before during the hearing. And I was a little surprised by some of the way it got out there. I know there were a lot of folks out there that were telling me, oh, it's going to be fine. It'll pass the House. We really just have to worry about the Senate. And I was like, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a lot closer than you think. I mean, there's been a lot of opposition out here to this type of. It's funny, 3 years ago when we were discussing the ESA bill, Senate Bill 1038. There was a lot of opposition to, creating a new government program that would actually have the money and have it get paid directly to the vendors, to teach, to help with homeschooling and private school. But then there was this whole push. No, we should just give it to the parents. And so once again, it's like, give it to the parents, give it to the schools. The Democrats and the big education crowd says we don't want to give any money anywhere. And then and then parents are just left out there and like, well, what are we going to do? Right. And so my whole rant this morning, Brian, was the system is clearly broken. The system is clearly broken, and we need a fundamental Doge type chainsaw to the education system here. Completely revamp it, and get it focused on what the Constitution says. Have you seen anybody out there with a plan that would do that very thing?
Well, not as audacious as I think we'd like. We're watching at the federal level, like with USAID. It turns out that the entire federal government's been turned into a money laundering operation for left-wing organizations that are actively campaigning against Western civilization, both in America and abroad. And Trump's the first president to actually come in and say, hey, we can just stop doing this. And you look at our public education system. If it were as great as the retired teachers and the public education boosters who testified this morning say it is, then we wouldn't have people wanting to leave it. But there are people for whom it's not working. There's a lot of people for whom it's not working. All these assessment tests show that only 30 to 40% of students are actually adequately meeting the standards that the government itself says that they should be meeting at these various grade levels. So clearly there's a problem between this bill, which provides, the way I see it, it provides an off-ramp. It's limited. It's a little more limited than I would like, but it will give families an opportunity to go try something new and see if that works for them. And it also should, if it increases, put pressure on the public school system to compete. Right now, they don't have to compete because they're the default option. They're the null hypothesis. It's just everybody automatically goes to public schools, and you're a little weird if you don't. But and if they fail, they just come to the legislature and say, "Well, we need more money." And they've been adding more money every year, and it's not actually improving outcomes. So clearly, there is something wrong. I just want to bring up real quick on the there's another thing going through. Representative Hawkins, I think we mentioned it, has a proposed constitutional amendment that would change the wording of our Constitution to say that it's not the government's job to ensure that you have your child has to go to a public school. It's the parents' job, and that the parents are always the primary choice makers, the primary motivators of their children's education. Our Constitution was written in the progressive era when we had this idea that, well, everybody should go to public schools because if not, they're going to grow up uneducated. They're not going to be able to carry on our Republican system of government. So we must educate them, and they put in the compulsory school language. And of course, many families in the 1970s and 80s found themselves imprisoned for homeschooling in that environment, including the Shippey family. And so now Representative Hawkins has a proposed amendment that would actually just change that to take away that compulsory language and say that parents are responsible for their children's education. There he's there. So I think with that on the one side, reminding everybody that it's a parent's job to educate children in whatever manner they see fit, and then on the other side, things like this tax credit bill providing an off ramp out of the public system for parents who perhaps want to try alternatives but they don't have the means right now. That should improve things all around, both for those families themselves, for the state of Idaho as a whole, and even for the public schools, which will now have to, improve or die.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if this bill should pass, but I mean, I think they've lowered the standards so much so that I think parents, they don't even know that they're getting ripped off. In most people who are just 9-to-5ers, they wake up, they get their kids ready for the school bus, or they drop them off themselves, or whatever it is. Like they just they work, they deal with all of the problems that are going on in our world today, and they're basically trying to pay attention to what their kids are doing in school. But it's hard. It's hard to get through that. And when you're just your average everyday family trying to get by, the standards have been lowered so much. It's like the proverbial frog in a slow boiling pot of water. They don't know how bad it is. But all you have to do is look around you and see those, what was that thing that came out that said 20% of Gen Alpha, Gen Z, whatever, identify as some sort of weird thing, which 30 years ago was like 1% of people, or less than 1%. Like there's something wrong. There's something in the water. There's, it's awful. And we need to revamp the system if we're serious about protecting children. If we're serious about it, then you got to start at the schools. They're there 8 hours a day. The indoctrination that's going on there. And like I said, there's great schools out there. There's great teachers with good intentions. Of course, this is Idaho. We're made up of good people. But it's it's the top down element that is just ruining this entire thing. Okay, Brian. So I mean, it got out of committee 8-7. I know that there is a deep hunger for something like this, a bill like this. So what are your anticipations when it finally gets on the third reading calendar in the House? How close is it going to be?
I don't think it's going to have a problem on the House floor. I think there's enough Republicans in Idaho that are going to support this. President Trump's executive order last week promoting school choice nationwide. I think it really changes the conversation because now, for a while, people have been able to argue that Republicans should support the public school system and the school choice stuff. It's new government programs, and we're not going to support that. It's public money going to private things. We can't support that. It made it seem like the default position was to support the public schools, and that those who supported this, money following the child, they're kind of on the fringe. But this flips that. Now the president of the United States, who's more popular than any Republican in the nation, is suddenly leading the way on this issue. Imagine if the governor was leading on this issue, by the way. And that changes the conversation because now the default assumption is that, well, you've got to support school choice. If you're opposing school choice at this point, you're on the fringe. You are in danger of getting a primary challenge from somebody who was. We already saw that with the last primary. Like I said, several people on the Rev and Tax Committee who voted against a similar bill last year, they lost their seats mainly because of this. A lot of the folks who were opposing school choice in Idaho, they lost their seats. So I don't see a problem in the House, and I don't necessarily see a problem on the Senate floor. It's going to be close, closer, I think, in the Senate. And then the Senate committee, it's going to be the same thing. So it's not a done deal, but I feel confident that they're going to get it through. The fact that the House Majority Leader, Senate Majority Leader, and the two co-chairs of JFAC are all the four sponsors of this bill, I think, is a good indicator that they're behind it. They're putting their reputations on this, and obviously they know how to whip votes.
Yeah. I mean, they don't call it leadership for nothing if you're not leading the way. So we'll see how it goes.